Everything is not your parents' fault. You know, at some point you have to grow up and take control and ownership of your own self.
Right.
Let's cut this shit. It is directly your fault.
So, you know, your parents can only do with so much. They did the best that they could.
Right.
God bless
With the
them
tools
all.
they had.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
And they came from another layer of trauma.
That's
Right.
my point. And so at some point you have to recognize that and then take the wheel yourself.
What now? Let me tell you what now.
Listen to this. We must begin to heal and stop blaming our parents for the things they didn't know any better on. For instance, I've noticed that tons of people blame their parents for the lack of teaching them economics.
How am I at fault for that?
But my logic is, how do you expect someone who has a middle school equivalency in economics to teach you how to understand money and to basically give you a PhD at something they didn't even know themselves?
Makes total sense.
We blame our parents for a lot of different things, but yet and still they only did what they were supposed to based on what they thought was right. So sometimes we put too much pressure on them to understand life when they was learning themselves.
I tell you, I gotta plead ignorance on this thing.
There's tons of things that we know that they didn't know. Now expect your children to know tons of things that you didn't know. That's called growth and evolution. In order to evolve, one must keep growing. So again, stop blaming your parents so much for what they didn't know.
It's time to stop!
And understand it wasn't permitted and it wasn't shown. So now the knowledge is more accessible. So now you know more than you knew, or whether your parents knew. So now you teach your children to be better. Stop blaming them because they didn't know. Don't let that go over your head.
Somebody gotta say it, and I'd be the bitch to say it. King, as hard as it is, you're gonna have to let it go. That's the only way you're gonna be able to move forward.
Let it go. Let it go.
See, a lot of people are holding on from past trauma from parents. Your mom, your dad, your grandparents. And granted, I understand the feeling of, you know, not feeling loved, not feeling wanted, not feeling needed, not feeling appreciated. Or, you know, even the feeling of abandonment, you know? A lot of y'all have had both parents in the household and still didn't feel that love.
Fact.
Or had parents in the household that tried to love you the best way they could. And it's like we can blame them all day, but we're adults now. Granted, that trauma may have had a heavy impact on who we are today, but we can't go through life constantly blaming them.
You brought this on yourself.
They only did what they knew how to do. They only loved in a way that they knew how. But it's one thing that they did do, and that was give life to you. And that in itself is enough. But
Then what?
Stop blaming your parents for what they did or didn't do during childhood. You have to start taking responsibility for who you are as an adult. That's not to minimize the impact of what may have happened during childhood,
You share as much blame for this as he does.
but it is to emphasize the huge necessity that we have to understand who we are and who our parents are and appreciate that on a much deeper level than blaming, expecting, and feeling entitled to something that we didn't get.
I agree to the terms.
You will be stuck feeling resentment and contempt towards your parents at a time when you no longer need your parents, you don't need their approval, and you don't even need what happened during childhood to have happened in order to improve your life. Because that is the overall goal. We want our lives to feel better.
I feel so much better. Thank you so much. Heart to heart.
Great.
Instead, ask them questions about who they are. Figure out what the story is in the larger intergenerational history and your family tree. Start making more meaning around this and who you are, so you can actually move on with your life. Otherwise, you will be having a second childhood during your adulthood. You will be reenacting all of the same issues and you will be stuck in a cycle. So stop blaming your parents, stop blaming other people, and start taking responsibility for the role that you play in your life. That is the only way we can grow and evolve.